On the evening of August 20th, 1966, in Niterói, Brazil, an 18-year-old by the name of Jorge da Costa Alves was enjoying a beautiful day flying his kite and stumbled upon one of the biggest mysteries in Brazilian history. The mystery would leave investigators and the populace stunned. A mystery that opens up a trove of theories, sending you down quite a few rabbit holes. Theories ranging from a murder, to a scientific experiment, to a spiritual ritual, to even a UFO encounter. Join me as we delve into the mystery and attempt to find the truth of what really happened. And welcome to Dredge Reality, where we talk about crazy facts, mysteries, and scary stories we've dredged from reality. Please subscribe to our channel, hit the bell notification, and the like button so you don't miss any content we've dredged up for you. Now let's get to digging. On that Saturday in August of 1966, Jorge da Costa Alves was on Venom Hill, which is a hillside located in a relatively modest and semi-rural area of Niterói, Brazil. Local residents, including children, would often play and explore the area. George was out on this day flying his kite. As he was flying the kite, the wind picked up and the string George was holding slipped out of his hand. His kite was taken away by the wind some distance to the side of the hill. This is when George started his journey to find it. While George was searching for his lost kite on the hillside, he noticed a foul odor coming from nearby. This is when he decided to go investigate the odor. In the distance on the side of the hill, he saw what he thought looked like two hikers taking a nap in some tall grass. As he got closer, he realized that the men were dressed in what looked like formal suits, which was totally out of place for the remote and rugged location. As he gets closer, he notices that they're also wearing raincoats, and this seems to be where the foul odor is coming from. George got even closer and noticed the two men not only dressed in formal suits and raincoats, but both men were wearing a mask. They looked like metal and shaped like goggles, but had no eye holes for sight. The men were also completely absent of any movement and appeared lifeless. Upon realizing the two men were unresponsive and likely dead, George panicked and ran down the hill as fast as he could. He ran to the neighborhood that was nearby to the hill and told local adults in this community. This is when they escalated the situation and contacted authorities. The authorities then arrived on the scene and confirmed the unknown men were dead. The bodies were in an advanced state of decomposition, indicating the men had been dead for several days. It was estimated they had been dead for 3 to 4 days before discovery. As they conducted a preliminary examination of the scene, they noticed several unusual details about the scene and the bodies. Things that just didn't make any sense on why these men were here and what had happened. The first thing they noticed was there were no signs of struggle or physical trauma. Also, the position of the bodies and what the men were wearing was unusual. The men were lying on their backs side by side. Both men were also dressed in formal attire, which again was extremely odd for the rugged area they were in. Their attire included formal suits, raincoats, and a peculiar metal mask. The metal mask covered the men's eyes, but there were no eye holes cut out for sight. The mask basically looked like sleep mask you wear to keep light from going through your eyelids. The mask also ended up being made of lead. Authorities also found some odd items nearby the scene, like a notebook that contained handwritten cryptic instructions. All the instructions were in Portuguese, which is the main language spoken in Brazil. This is what one of the handwritten notes in the notebook said.
1630. Be at the agreed place. 1830. Swallow capsules. After the effect. Protect metals. Await signal. Mask.
The note is specifying an agreed upon place and time to meet, suggesting that the men had planned their actions in advance. Also, an agreed upon time to swallow capsules, possibly drugs, poison, or other substances. But investigators wouldn't know the answer to this until they could get results from an autopsy and a toxicology report. There were no capsules found at the scene. The portion of the handwritten note that said protect metals is highly enigmatic. Some theorists suggest it could refer to shielding themselves or their belongings, such as watches, coins, or other devices, from some source of radiation or other effects, but this is just theory. The last part of the handwritten letter, where it says await signal and mask, suggests some kind of expected event, such as a message, light, or sound. The mask part presumably refers to the lead mask found on the men's faces, which could have been intended to shield their eyes from bright light or radiation. An empty water bottle and 2 towels were also discovered, suggesting that the men had been preparing themselves for some sort of event. The men were also found with money on them, suggesting whatever happened didn't happen as a robbery motive. After authorities made their initial investigation at the scene, the bodies were recovered from the remote area on Venom Hill and transported to the local medical examiner's office for an autopsy and further investigation. Due to the state of decomposition and poor investigative practices, the autopsy process was proved to be one of the weakest aspects of the investigation, with key forensic evidence being degraded or lost due to decomposition and weak investigating. There was no record of the autopsy report explicitly searching for capsules in the stomach of the men. It's not clear if the medical examiner failed to focus on this possibility, or if any remains of the capsules may have been degraded due to the condition of the bodies. The medical examiner also failed to test for drugs or poison, even though there was strong evidence in the notebook found next to the bodies that suggest ingestion of some type of substance. This remains a crucial gap in the investigation, leaving the men's cause of death a mystery. In 1960s Brazil, forensic science, especially in smaller jurisdictions like Niterói, was underdeveloped. Testing for specific substances like hallucinogens, poisons, or experimental chemicals might have been beyond the capabilities of local facilities. In the meantime, authorities had to work on figuring out who these men were. They released the information of the bodies being found in the media, hoping that someone would come forward and be able to shed light on the men's identities. They had an idea based off the information found at the scene, but weren't positive. Rewind back to August 17, 1966. 2 men by the name of Manuel Pereira da Cruz and Miguel Jose Viana were both electronic repairmen from Campos dos Goitacazes, a city located in the state of Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. They told their families they were going on a trip to Sao Paulo for work-related business. They specifically told their families they planned to purchase electronic components and supplies for their work as electronic technicians. They told them they would be back in a few days. The men then said goodbye to their families and set off on their journey. Except the men didn't travel to Sao Paulo like they had told their families they were. They actually traveled to Niterói instead. When they arrived to Niterói, they were seen doing some shopping. They ended up purchasing 2 identical waterproof raincoats, which was odd considering the weather was clear that day. They also bought a bottle of mineral water from a bar. A bar employee said he had sold him the water. That employee and others at the bar recalled the men appearing anxious and kept looking at their watches as if they were on a tight schedule. The men made a deposit for the return of the water bottle, which was common back then. This is when you would put a deposit down, and when you returned the bottle to be recycled, you would get your deposit back. This was a clue because it suggests they expected to return later with the bottle. After this, the men made their way to Venom Hill. This is where they were seen by a witness walking up the hill. They carried waterproof raincoats, a bottle of water, towels, lead masks, and a small notebook containing cryptic instructions. They would never return home to their families. Fast forward a few days back to August 20th, 1966, authorities released descriptions of the men whose bodies were found and items found at the scene to the media, hoping someone would come forward and identify the bodies. Within a few days, Manuel Pereira da Cruz and Miguel Jose Viana's family came forward to identify the bodies. The men had not returned home, and the description of the men along with their belongings made the family believe it was them. The family made a positive identity of them once they saw the bodies. The bodies belonged to the men. But there were so many questions. Why did the men travel to Niterói instead of Sao Paulo? Why did they not tell their families? Why were they dressed in suits and a raincoat on the rugged Venom Hill? Why were they wearing a lead mask? These are some of the questions that have baffled people for decades. The men's families said they were calm and acting normal before leaving on their journey, but the bar staff where they had bought the mineral water said they were anxious and kept checking their watches as if they were on a tight schedule or something was about to happen soon. So just to recap, the investigators discovered the decomposing bodies of Manuel Pereira de Cruz and Miguel Jose Viana, who were two electronic repairmen. The bodies lying on their backs side by side were dressed in a formal suit covered in a raincoat with lead mask over their eyes. Near them was a notebook that contained handwritten cryptic instructions, 2 towels, an empty water bottle, and a decent amount of cash. They also lied to their families about what city they were going to, seemed normal upon leaving, and the police were working with a sloppy crime scene and a botched autopsy. After talking to friends and family members of Cruz and Vienna, authorities found out the men were into spiritualism, which could have possibly linked them to the occult or esoteric practices. But this is just theory, and no solid evidence has ever been linked to the men in the occult or esoteric practices. Where do the authorities go from here? I mean, they weren't working with much information, and the scene was extremely odd. Were the authorities dealing with a murder? It's a very logical and normal first thing to speculate, but what was up with all the cryptic instructions, mentioned capsules, and all the other evidence? Some theories suggest the men were involved in smuggling or illegal technology work, causing accomplices or rivals to orchestrate their deaths to seem self-inflicted by exploiting their spiritual beliefs. The men were both interested in spiritualism, which could have made them vulnerable to manipulation, possibly through a cult. A third party might have exploited their trust or beliefs to lure them into a deadly trap. The capsules the men allegedly took might have contained a lethal substance administered under the guise of preparations for a ritual or experiment. A third party could have convinced them that the capsules were harmless or necessary for contact with extraterrestrials or spiritual beings. The lead mask, coats, and cryptic notes could have been staged by the murderer or murderers to make the death appear self-inflicted or accidental, diverting suspicion away from foul play. The issues with this theory is investigators found no concrete evidence of another person being present at the scene or directly involved in the events leading to their deaths. There was also no documented history of disputes, enemies, or criminal entanglements that might point to the reason for their murders. The inability to perform a toxicology test due to decomposition or negligence means there's no proof that the capsules were intentionally poisoned or tampered with. Could the men have unalived themselves? I know it's the S word, but I can't say that on YouTube. Yes, another theory is the men unalived themselves in some sort of pact. This could be the reason why the men had a detailed note with cryptic instructions, suggesting deliberate preparation. This also could be the reason why they had instructions to take capsules. The problem with this theory is that the lead mask didn't really follow anything related to them doing this to themselves. Also, why were they wearing suits and raincoats? Why did they put the deposit down on the bottle of water? Also, the men's friends and family reported no signs of depression or unaliving tendencies. Instead, they seemed excited about their plans relating to their spiritual pursuits. Could authorities be dealing with some sort of scientific experiment that went wrong? This is another theory. Both men were skilled in electronics and reportedly shared an interest in creating and experimenting with devices. They had previously experimented with homemade electronic equipment, which suggests they were knowledgeable in this field and may have been testing something related to their work. The lead mask appeared to be handmade and could have indicated shielding their eyes from some strong light or radiation, suggesting they may have been attempting an experiment involving high-energy radiation, electricity, or light. The men may have consumed capsules containing an unknown substance, believing it was harmless or would help them achieve a specific goal like enhanced perception, but ended up being toxic, leading to a fatal consequence. Some suspect the men might have misunderstood or improperly applied scientific concepts such as electromagnetic fields, radiation, or chemical reactions. The detailed planning in the notebook suggests a methodical approach, but they may not have accounted for the potential dangers of the substances or processes they were using. This oversight could have turned a controlled experiment into a fatal mistake. One problem with this theory is there wasn't any advanced electronic devices, radiation-emitting equipment, or tools found at the scene. Since both men were interested in spiritual practices, possibly occult, and believed in extraterrestrial life, was it the theory of some kind of spiritual ritual gone wrong? This could explain the cryptic instructions inside the notebook. Spiritual rituals were very popular in Brazil in the 1960s. Spiritualism in Brazil often blends science, mysticism, and esoteric beliefs, including communication with spirits, extraterrestrial entities, and participating in rituals to achieve enlightenment or otherworldly contact. The handmade lead masks could have been meant to shield their eyes from a bright spiritual light or supernatural energy during the ritual. Some speculate the mask could prevent harmful energies or just be a part of the ritual costume. The await signal message in the notebook could have been insinuating a divine or otherworldly message. Also, a choice of such an isolated place seemed deliberate. Such locations are often associated with spiritual or mystical significance in rituals. Friends and colleagues had reported the men had been involved in similar activities before, including experimenting with devices believed to contact spirits or extraterrestrial beings. Another clue for a spiritual ritual was the men's sense of urgency while waiting on the mineral water at the bar. This could align with the preparation of a ritual. A lot of theories suggest they might have performed a spiritual ritual attempting to achieve an altered state of consciousness or spiritual enlightenment through the ritual, possibly using the capsules to aid in this process. Spiritualists often believe in unseen energies that can harm or enlighten participants during rituals. The lead mask may have been a protection from these forces. Some speculate that a third party, possibly a spiritualist or guide, instructed them to perform the ritual and may have been present or advised them beforehand. The only problem with this theory was there was no clear evidence of ceremonial items or tools often associated with rituals like candles and altars, so the authorities really didn't have enough evidence to come to this conclusion. During the 1960s, Brazil had a surge in UFO sightings, and both men reportedly believed in extraterrestrial life. Could it have been an experiment by the men to attempt to contact UFOs or extraterrestrials using electronics or other methods? This is our last theory. One reason for this theory is witnesses reported seeing unusual lights in the sky near Venom Hill, where the men were found dead. These lights were observed around the time of their deaths. The lights in the sky were described as bright and unexplained, which aligns with common UFO sightings that are often linked to encounters with alien ships or unknown phenomena. The phrase await signal in the notebook is a key element of the UFO theory. It suggests that the men were anticipating a signal, possibly from extraterrestrial entities or UFO, which they believe would occur at a specific time. The lead masks found on their faces are another key detail in the UFO theory, since lead is historically thought to protect against radiation or harmful energies. In UFO lore, encounters with extraterrestrial ships are often associated with intense light or radiation. The mask may have been worn to protect them from radiation or metaphysical energies that they believe would come from a UFO or alien contact. Also, the fact the men were found on an isolated hilltop could be seen as an attempt to escape interference, giving them the ideal setting to either witness or attempt to communicate with a UFO. The problem with this theory is while witnesses reported strange lights, there is no direct evidence of a UFO sighting or encounter at the time of their deaths. The lights in the sky could have been any number of natural or man-made phenomenon, such as aircraft, weather balloons, or even atmospheric conditions. Even though the men were reported to believe in extraterrestrial life, there is no proof or concrete evidence they were trying to contact extraterrestrial life or UFOs. This theory does align with the era's fascination with UFOs and extraterrestrial life, but it remains speculative due to the lack of direct proof of their extraterrestrial involvement. So what do you think happened to Manuel Pereira da Cruz and Miguel Jose Viana? Do you think they were murdered, or do you think it was an accident? Do you think it was an experiment gone wrong? Maybe someone misleading them and causing their deaths? Or do you think it was some sort of spiritual ritual or some sort of attempt to contact extraterrestrial life? Comment below and let me know what you think. This case is one of the biggest unsolved mysteries in Brazilian history. I mean, what could have possibly happened to these men? This has baffled authorities and others for almost 60 years. Will we ever know the truth? Or will this remain a mystery, forever leaving people speculating and families without closure? Thanks so much for watching, and please make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any reality we've dredged up for you. I'll see you next time with some more crazy facts, mysteries, and scary stories we've dredged from reality.